welcome to today's webinar from Practical Ecommerce, How to Change Ecommerce Platforms. My name is Lori McDonald. I'm a regular contributor to Practical Ecommerce. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of Brilliance Business Solutions. We're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We specialize in B2B e-commerce solutions. My background's technical. I went to Purdue in computer and electrical engineering, but I also have an interest in digital marketing and how data can be used to measure and improve results for companies. I get really excited helping businesses realize the untapped potential that exists for them through the use of e-commerce, so I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'm excited about it because I've worked with several customers on transitioning their site to a new platform, and I know the process can produce a lot of anxiety. There are so many details to be considered. And so today we're going to talk through several of those considerations. We'll talk about common mistakes, how you can avoid them. We even have checklists available for you to download to provide you with useful takeaways from today's webinar. At the end of the webinar today, we have a Q&A, and so if you have questions, please type those into the chat box so we can answer them at the end of the presentation. We've got a lot to cover today. At a high level, we'll be talking about planning and building your requirements. We'll talk about the data that you need to migrate from your existing site to your new e-commerce site. We'll talk through integrations, what integrations you have today, what integrations you want to have, and how to go about setting those up on your site. We'll talk through SEO considerations. What do you need to do to protect your SEO rankings to make sure you don't drop off your rankings in Google and other search engines as a part of this move? We'll talk through testing, understanding what you should test and who should be doing that testing. And we'll talk about how to execute an effective site launch. During today's presentation, in addition to myself, you'll hear from three other speakers. David Sesson and Andy Humphrey are two merchants who will share their experiences with recent site migrations, as well as SEO practitioner Hamlet Batista, who will give recommendations on best practices for maintaining your SEO rankings as a part of your platform change. So with that, let's get started. First, we're going to talk about planning. Planning really needs to come before anything else. And I'm a big believer in measuring twice and cutting once. I've seen so many projects where the shortchanging a step really was disastrous for the project overall. And the better you and your team are at planning this, the better your outcome will be. I think many times, companies don't shortchange planning out of really trying to do a shoddy job of the project. And in many cases, they think they have done the planning that needs to be done, and they just haven't been through a process like this to really understand all that needs to be considered, which is a great rationale behind this topic today, really to give you a better understanding of all the questions that you need to answer as a part of that process. Starting at a high level, you really want to think through what your goals and requirements are for your new site. So I think a good question to ask is, what does success look like for you? And, to ask this question of other people within your company who are part of this project. So think about it, 3 months after your new site is live, what would need to be true for you to say this project exceeded your expectations? Write that down. Have other people on your team write that down. Share that and agree collectively on what your priority is for the project, and then share that with everyone that will be working on the project with you so that you all have a common understanding of really what your goal is. Most likely you have issues with the store you have today. I would call those gaps. So, gaps between what you have and what you want, and those are things that are motivating you to move to this new platform. Those most likely are relatively easy for you to identify, and you should definitely list them out. That's important for you to address. Those are your current sources of pain. What often gets missed and can be a major source of frustration are assumptions that you make about how your new software will work based on how your current software works today. We recently had a customer who was on an e-commerce platform that was badly in need of an upgrade, but it also had a lot of functionality that had been custom built in it related to order processing. And the order processing functionality wasn't standard in the cart they were moving to. In fact, it really isn't standard in any carts that I've seen the way it was implemented there. And this was an important thing for them to specify in the requirements for the project, and it wasn't something they originally recognized as something they needed to say. Because it was something they were so used to, they just kind of assumed it would be there. And I've seen a number of instances where this happens as a part of the project. It's kind of natural. Customers who are used to something and they've been working with it for a while and don't know the software they're moving to that well may just kind of assume that what they have today will be a part, the things they like today will be a part of the next project. So that can be really key to figure out how to make sure to get those requirements down, and I'll give you a tip about how to address that in just a moment. Another thing that I wanted to share is that I've seen a number of instances where the person I'm working with doesn't really know all of what's been done to the site. Maybe they weren't on the team, they weren't at the company before when the site was originally built, or oftentimes there are many people that have been a part of building the site to where it is at this point. And so that can make it really hard for you to define the requirements, what you have today. And what you want to avoid is, having you move to your new system and then realizing that many things that you really were counting on or were important to you are now missing. So one of the ways to avoid misses like this in the requirements is to talk to various stakeholders about how they use the site, and even better than talking to them, to actually watch them, sit with them, and watch how they interact with the site today. It's great to have a third party do this if possible, because a third party won't be so used to your business, and so they'll naturally see things that you might overlook because it just seems so common to you. But even if you're doing this internally, just make sure you kind of put on a hat to kind of think about what would it look like from someone else's point of view that doesn't know your business so well. So, ask, your customer service team to show you what do they do when a customer calls in and has a question about an order, or when someone's having trouble on the site. Or ask your marketing team to show you how they set up promotions or they set up emails, and watch how people use the site and get them to share with you what aspects of the site they absolutely need to have moving forward, as well as what pain points need to be resolved. So, that's a great conversation for you to have with customer service, with IT, with marketing and fulfillment, to see what they're doing today, what they, absolutely want to keep, and also where their current pain points are. At my company, at Brilliance, we often find it helpful to send our project manager and a technical analyst to meet with customers on site to work through this face-to-face, and that gives them time to go and sit with people and watch how they use the site. However you do this, be sure that you give this an adequate amount of time and attention in your process. So you'll want to write up your findings in a document. It's great to include screenshots of what your users do today, as well as examples of functionality you want but don't currently have. That can be examples from other sites, things that you like that you've seen on other sites. When you build this requirements document, be sure to know what functionality is a must-have and what is a nice-to-have or could come in a future phase. That's important because in most situations, no one really has an unlimited budget, and so you'll have a lot of ideas about things you want in this new site, and it's good to understand what is the minimum that would be a place you could start from, so that if your requirements are more expensive than you have a budget for, you can understand how you can get the site launched with your minimum requirements and build other features in future phases. Or it can allow you to kind of prioritize what features are the most important. When you have these requirements written up, you'll want to validate that the software you're planning on moving to is the right one, not just for your current needs today, but kind of thinking through, where do you see your site going in the next 3 to 5 years? Do you need capabilities for content in addition to e-commerce? Do you have things like technical specs or user guides, other documents that need to be stored within the site? And, what type of search experience do you want users to have? those are all important questions as you think about, what your software platform needs to support. Do people need to log in and see different content or see different pricing? And so you'll just want to make sure that things that are on your site roadmap, even if it's not this year, but 2 or 3 years down the road, are supported by the platform that you're moving to. And it's also important to think about what features are going to be instrumental in driving a return on investment and making you money. Many features that I'm often talking to customers about in terms of them seeing a strong return on investment on is a great mobile experience, an easy-to-use mobile experience, transactional emails, so emails like abandoned cart emails, post-purchase emails, personalized promotions for customers, things like, recommending upsell or cross-sell products to help increase the average order size, and features and functionality around creating landing pages that can be used in conjunction with paid search to drive new customer acquisition. Those can be great ways of taking the store that you're building and really maximizing the return that you get through it. And so one of the things you want to look at is, for the strategies that you're going to want to use from a digital marketing perspective, will your site support those, and how much will it cost for you to implement those different features and functionality on the site? Another thing you'll want to take a look at as a part of your planning is considering what site upgrades will cost you in the future and looking at your total cost of ownership over the next, say, 5 years. So there are some platforms that are less expensive to get into but are more costly over time to maintain. And so you really want to take a look at your total cost of ownership, and that really will also depend on what features and customizations you plan on implementing on the site. So, once you have that plan in place, you've got the right software, you also want to know that you've got the right team. So, thinking through who will be that team that works with you on this project. You'll need some representatives from your internal users. So the people that we kind of talked about in terms of customer service and IT and marketing, you'll need to have those people on the team that are talking about and planning this site. You'll need a designer who is familiar with designing for mobile. In many companies that we work with, they'll have a designer on the project who their core area of focus isn't web design and user experience. And so if you have a designer on your team whose primary focus is around print, you'll most likely want to have another designer involved in the project who is used to designing for mobile user experience, because it's really is a different skill set. You'll need developers, ideally developers who are experienced with the platform you're moving to. If you are using developers internally, you might have developers internally who don't have previous experience on the platform you're moving to. You'll want to plan for that in terms of them needing extra time to get up to speed on the platform. And hopefully you're setting up some training related to the platform. You also should be aware that it does create more risk in terms of them being aware of what technical issues might need to be addressed as a part of the project overall. You'll want someone to serve as a project leader and a manager of the project. And I think project management is something that often is neglected overall. I really believe that the ability to deliver projects on time and on budget has to do with this planning step we're talking about, but also great project management. So think about what kind of a cadence you're going to set up to keep your project on track. There should be a group of people that are meeting to check in on the project progress on a daily basis, and then reporting back to other members of your team on a weekly basis. And when I say team, I'm talking both your internal and external members of that team. You kind of need to determine how you're dividing up those responsibilities. Even if your developers are internal, you should start with an estimate of how much time the site migration is going to take, how much time different features will take, so that you can measure yourself against those plans as the project goes on. Expect the unexpected. If unexpected things do occur, plan for it. Keep your eye focused on what your overall goal was for success. So back to what you originally said was your high-level goal for the project. It's easy to get distracted by ideas that kind of come up throughout the project. And remember that in many cases, you're better off getting your new site live and then coming back and incrementally improving it. I think this would be a great time to hear from the experiences of a merchant who's been through a recent site migration. Let me turn it over to David Sasson, who will share his experiences in changing e-commerce platforms.
Thank you, Lori. I'm David Sasson with OverstockArt.com, and I'm the president of OverstockArt.com and the founder of the company as well. We've been in business since 2002. We have about 12,000 SKUs on our website. Also, all of the SKUs are in our stock, and we offer framing for all the art that we sell, so consumers are able to choose for about 100,000 different wall art options when we take into account all the framing options that we have. We have about 15 employees, and we are a growing company and excited about our future. We started the migration process in late 2013, and we really launched that platform, the new platform, in late 2015. So it took about 2 years to get our site going. And we chose OpenCart as the base for the platform. And one of the reasons we chose that, it is fully customizable. We have it's on our server, and we can do anything we want with this new platform. We came from a very restrictive platform, so flexibility is one of the things we looked for. So we decided to migrate for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is that the platform that we had before had restrictions, had a very small group of developers that we could use. It used a special language that you had to know, and so our ability to hire developers was very limited. And it was key for us to be able to do continuous improvements on our website, and we were very limited. It was also more expensive. We even had a project that we tried to do. Our product is very visual, being art, and we wanted a larger image of the framed painting, and we couldn't get it done. We hired a development company. They worked on it for 8 months and then gave us our money back after 8 months. So it was very time-consuming, very few developers, and we were not able to do everything that we wanted, even if we paid, even if we hired, and all those kind of things. So we were looking for some place where we can get lots of different developers to do kind of a continuous improvement methodology on our website, where the website improves daily, and at the same time reduce our development costs. We did a nice search and found a number of different companies that offer the kind of things that we wanted, but narrowed down to one company. We worked with them for a long period of time, and they got to a point where they stopped responding, and they weren't able to finish the project. They got it about 85% done and couldn't finish it. At that point, we took over the project, hired a number of different developers, and gave each developer kind of a mini project, and we coordinated it all, and were able to get the site to 100%, so to speak, so we could launch it and move forward. Yeah. We're very glad that we made the switch. It was necessary for us, and there were some really important things. First of all, is performance of your website. And we measure performance using two key matrices, which I think most retailers use: close ratio and then dollar per session. Both of those ratios are up. Also, our traffic is up right now, but natural traffic, free traffic is up, which obviously increases our sales as a result, increases profitability, increases cash. It also, because it's our own platform now, it actually also increases the value of our company as a whole. And so we like the fact that we made a move that improves us long-term and short-term. We got to a point where the site was almost done, and then we would review it 2 weeks later, and it's almost done, but that's a new set of problems. And then it's almost done, but it's a new set of problems. Finally, in early October, we said, if we don't launch it now, it's going to go to next year. so let's launch it. And I think in retrospect, it was a mistake because it cost us a lot of sales in the fourth quarter where it's key to increase your sales. And so I think we should have launched not later, but before. We should have taken over, fired the initial company that we had doing the project, hired a couple of different developers to get the site further up the development chain, so to speak, and launch it in July or August. Launch it earlier, take the loss, the potential loss during those months as opposed to taking it in October and definitely in November. December we were better. So my advice to merchants is, first of all, do a lot of due diligence on the company that you choose. This development that we did went good, even though we had a small problem and had to kind of take over the project towards the end. We still got a lot from the initial company that we chose. But we also did a re-platform development in 2006 or 7 that just went completely the wrong way. We ended up paying a lot of money and got absolutely nothing for it. Just went back to our old site. So picking the right merchant is really critical. Having an initial meeting where we both understand exactly what we're looking for, outside of the contracts and the agreements, which are necessary as well, just a discussion that we know what it is and we understand. And then there is going to be a setting expectations. So they're going to tell you that they can finish in, say, 3 months. That's what they told us. You have to know as a merchant that it's impossible to finish a re-platform in 3 months.
Thanks, David. There's always so much to be learned from others' experiences, and I really appreciate hearing from yours. Next up, we're going to move to a discussion around data. You'll need to decide on what data needs to be moved from your old system to your new system and how much of the data will be moved. Most likely, in many cases, you'll want to move over product data, but it's also possible that your product data isn't in the best of shape. We frequently talk to customers who decide to use this site migration or site move as an opportunity to update their product photos and product descriptions. And if that's true for you, you may consider not migrating the data in mass, but rather setting it up manually as you are taking new product photos and setting up new descriptions. That really will depend on how many products you have. So if you have 30 products, that's one thing to set it up manually. If you have 30,000 products, that's an entirely different endeavor. So really considering how you're going to approach getting that data into your new system. Another aspect of data that is often a part of a site move is your customer data and order history. So you'll want to think through how you're handling that. In most cases, you move over your customer accounts, so like their username and that the account tied to that. You may decide not to bring over order history. I recently was talking to a customer, and I asked them what data they wanted moved over, and they said all of it, which is a common response. But a lot of times people don't understand that moving data has a cost. And so especially in the case that you may have a budget that is somewhat restrictive or you're trying to look for places to save money, you may decide to not bring over order history as an example. So we've had customers who bring over, customer accounts, but they don't bring over the order history, and they tell customers that, they can contact the customer service team to get records of past orders if needed. Or you may decide to only bring over 1 year of order history instead of your entire order history. There certainly is a cost to bringing over a year, of order history as well. But just remember that moving data has a cost, and that can be one of the levers you can pull if you're looking at how you can migrate your site less expensively. Every platform is different, and so, in general, data isn't usually just a quick and easy switch to flip to get it from one place to another. Oftentimes it involves writing scripts or like SQL scripts or data scripts. There might be code involved and processes to write in terms of transferring data. So you'll want to make sure you have a clear understanding of where that responsibility lies if there is manual entry that you're going to be doing, and to make sure you have time allocated for that manual entry, or if you have your development team writing some code or scripts to make that data move happen. Depending on the system you're moving to, you may be able to put data in an Excel spreadsheet and load it into your new platform. Just a forewarning there is that I've also seen situations where that can be a struggle for people to get the data in the right format in the Excel spreadsheet, and sometimes that requires some massaging as well. So just talk with the developers that are familiar with your new system about what data you want to have moved over and have a plan for how you'll approach that. We typically plan to train our customers on the software they're moving to early enough to give them time to enter the data they'll be responsible for entering. So that's a question to ask, is at what point in the project will you receive training? And also, get some recommendations around what sizes of images are going to work best within your site design. If you are going to have documents like tech specs on the new site, make sure they're organized in a way to make it clear what documents are associated with which products, so that it's easy for you if you're setting that up manually to find them at the point where data is ready to be loaded. Getting data in the site often can be a holdup in getting a site launched. We've had customers where sites were built, but it was another 6 months before all the data was ready to get into the site. So make sure that isn't a holdup as a part of your project. One common surprise for merchants is that assuming your current site is following PCI compliance guidelines, user passwords will need to be reset as a part of moving users to the new platform. And this is because platforms that are for PCI compliance and security reasons encrypt passwords in a way that does not allow you as a merchant to be able to see the password or to be able to export them. It's a security protection for your customers. But oftentimes people kind of just expected that as a part of the migration, users would have their username and password, the same password they had before. So because of this, you just need to have a plan around how you're going to inform your customers that their password has been reset. And it really can be delivered, the communication can be delivered in a very positive way. You can send an email out to your customers announcing the new site, new features that will be available as a part of it, and giving them instructions on how to set their new password. So that's just something you want to plan for in advance. I think this would be a good time to hear from the experiences of another merchant, Andy Humphrey, who manages several e-commerce businesses, and he's recently been through a site migration of his own.
Lori, thank you for having me today. My name is Andy Humphrey, and I live in Traverse City, Michigan, and I'm the owner of treekeeperbag.com, as well as a number of other e-commerce businesses. Our product size on our domains and our businesses ranges from 15 SKUs, and our largest business, which is a seven-figure business, has roughly 8,000 SKUs. So we took treekeeperbag.com this fall, and that particular store has roughly 30 SKUs. And we started our migration to the Shopify platform. I think it went really well. I actually think it went better than I probably could have expected for a lot of different reasons, but mostly we were able to finish our project spot on time, right at our goal deadline. Everything worked perfectly, and we had an initial uptick in our conversion rate. I would say another unique element was that we were anticipating somewhere between a 10 and 15% loss in organic SEO traffic and listings, and we were willing to accept that and then work towards building it back up. But I can happily report that the opposite happened. We actually got a rise in SEO. One of the things I'd like to mention and talk about is working with a partner. We decided that we needed outside help, and we spent a lot of time thinking about what skills could myself and my team bring to the table. So when we hired a company, we knew exactly what we were going to do, and we knew exactly what this outside company was going to help us with. And I think that's the number one thing you should look for if you're thinking about migrating to a new platform, is really take a hard look at what your skill sets are if you're a single sole operator, and what the skill sets are of your team if you have an in-house staff, and also what the skill sets are of some of the possible contract labor that you may already work with. And that'll help you focus in on what specific skills and assets does a development company need to provide you. And if you know exactly what you need, it'll be much easier to understand what the price is going to be to migrate. Shopify has worked out really well so far. There was a couple little things that we missed during the process. Just as a for instance, we missed the fact that the Shopify platform does not have a cost of goods field in the inventory or in the product catalog. It's a small little oversight. I guess we had sort of assumed that there must be a cost of goods field. So we're actually in the process of looking for a third-party app to integrate with. And if I think back 10 years ago, the e-commerce platform that we were on did many, many, many things. And it's almost as if the marketplace has shifted so that the shopping cart is really the catalog and the user experience for the customer. And instead of a shopping cart vendor having to be everything to everyone, the shopping cart is just the catalog, just the user experience. And then all the back-end features can be supported and driven by third-party partners. And it looks like it's been proven to be very successful. And so far we're on the right track and really excited.
Thanks, Andy, for sharing your experiences with treekeeperbag.com. I'm really glad to hear how well that went for you. Next up, we're going to be talking about dealing with data integrations as a part of your e-commerce platform change. So we were talking about data and migrating data from one platform to another, but integrations are kind of a different animal from the perspective that now we're talking about moving data on an ongoing automated basis between your e-commerce site and another system. Many companies we work with have integrations that assist them in fulfilling orders that are placed on their site. So this often includes an integration with an enterprise resource planning software system, so an ERP system, or it could be an accounting system. Like systems like Microsoft Dynamics or QuickBooks. So bringing orders down from the website into your ERP and accounting software is a very common integration. Other common integrations include integrations for product pricing, so updating pricing on the website from your a back office system, updating inventory, updating customer account information, so things like credit limits and customer-specific pricing. So you want to make sure you've considered what integrations you currently have today, as well as what integrations you need to have moving forward. Once you know what integrations you need, so take a look at what integrations might be pre-built with your new system. It's important to remember that data integrations are a frequent source of headaches for companies. Even in the case of pre-built integrations, it can be problematic. So I really recommend talking to others that have worked with the pre-built integration in the past. It's great to get some references, talk to other customers that have experienced that before. I've seen many instances where an integration is stated to be pre-built, and maybe it is pre-built, but maybe it doesn't work exactly the way you need it. So it may not integrate all the fields that you need to have integrated, or depending on how much volume you have coming through your site, it may not hold up to the data volume you need it to. So I'd recommend asking some questions about a pre-built integration. Find out what type of logging is in place to troubleshoot if an issue with the data is not transferred properly. So, if you find out one day that an order's been placed on the website but didn't make it into your accounting system, how are you going to determine where that issue occurred? you'll want to know that there are some logs in place that you can figure out where that failure happened. You'll want to verify what fields and information are being transferred back and forth. So do you expect the shipping method to be transferred as a part of it? If you confirm that is being sent, sales tax information, making sure that ends up in the correct field that you need within your system. So just verifying, and it's great to have documentation around all the fields that you expect to have integrated and where you expect them to end up within your system, and to validate how the integration works. It's also really good to understand if the integration fails, what type of support is available for the integration and how quickly you can expect a response. We once had a customer who their integration failed and was down for a day, which was really completely unacceptable from them in terms of the amount of orders they had coming in and them needing to find ways to fulfill these orders for customers when their integration wasn't working. That can cause real problems for your business. So get clear on what kind of response time you can expect. In the case of that customer, we help them move to a different integration that offer them better support and response time. So, the other thing to consider is what version of the software does the integration support, and how frequently do they update their software. So if you decide to upgrade your accounting system, how will you be confident that a new version of the integration will be available, or do you have to wait until they upgrade their integration for you to be able to upgrade your accounting system? So if there aren't pre-built integrations available, or the pre-built ones don't meet your needs, you can still build an integration, assuming that the platform has API or web services available. As a part of doing this, you'll want to make sure the development team you're working on to do the integration has experience working with data integrations. We often find that in projects like that, it can be beneficial to have both subject matter experts on the integration for the software system for your new e-commerce system, as well as having some representatives from the team supporting your accounting or ERP system, and to have them working together in tandem. That can really help a project to be a success. So at this point, I am excited to turn this over to Hamlet Batista to share SEO considerations as a part of a replatforming effort. Hamlet's an expert in his space, and he's got some great advice to share.
Thank you, Lori. This is Hamlet Batista. I'm the CEO and founder of RankSense, an SEO revenue reclamation platform. So I'm going to walk you over the SEO implications of a migration, and I put together what I think is a comprehensive checklist of the tasks you have to complete and accomplish. And this is, it's a lot of steps, but this is available as a downloadable PDF as part of the webinar. So let's get to it. So what are we going to cover? We're going to go over what are the general recommendations for the migration, some important gotchas, related to the migration. I mentioned a good number of them in the article that I published on the Practical Commerce website. I want to also mention some tools that are going to make your job a lot easier. And I'm going to walk you over how to make sure you're prepared during the move, and also to roll back in case there are any problems. And also an important step, especially for large sites, is how do you perform a partial migration of your site in a way that you're going to limit your risk, the traffic, loss potential. And finally, we're going to talk about how do you monitor your key metrics, your stats after the migration. So what are the main recommendations? So the main recommendations, and I like to mention that when you're doing a migration, you want to think about what are the key principles you have to keep in mind when you're doing a migration. And the key principles are do as fewer big changes as possible. You don't want to be making a lot of big changes at once. And if you can make the migration while keeping the same URLs, please try to do that, because that's going to simplify a lot of that's going to help you avoid a lot of the typical problems that we see during migrations. Okay, so after those principles, then what are the details of that, right? So you need to put together very comprehensive URL maps if you're making the migration change. Your staging site, your new site in staging should be password protected. There are other ways with no index and Roblox.txt, but we find that the password protection or having it behind a VPN is the typical best approach. The big changes, you want to be deploying the big changes in phases, especially when I'm talking about big changes, we're talking about site navigation changes, URL structure, big content changes, new features that you're adding to the site. So those are things you want to be phasing out. Just if you can delay those to do after the migration, let's try to do that. Let's try to do that first. And some other things that are can be quite obvious is that you want to be making those migrations when are the lowest traffic times on your site. Typically the Saturdays for most e-commerce merchants. You want to register your sites in Search Console, both the old and the new one. I mean, the old one should be registered already, but obviously, while it's in staging, your site is not going to have any activity there. Okay. So what are some key gadgets? And I mentioned some of them on the Practical E-commerce website. The main one is that keep the existing titles and meta descriptions. I mean, at least primarily the titles. Unless they are really terrible and you see that the new ones are going to be, a lot better than the old ones, I will delay the changing the titles because they create re-rankings. They re-rank your site, and the traffic is a gamble. You don't know where you're going to end up in the new site. Okay, and compile a big list of all the URLs you can get from your old site, because even if they're not linked from within your site, Google might still be able to find them. So you want to account for all the URLs on your site. And specific things that are more nuanced, which is the settings that you have in Webmaster Tools, redundant parameters. This stuff you want to make sure that you update that in the new site, in the new profiles. And delay advanced features, keep, your old redirects in place. Those are key things that you have to consider as well. So what are some, and if you, for additional details on batches, you can read my article on Practical Commerce. So what are some of the tools that can help you accomplish this work, right? And so we put this nice table where, the obvious ones, Google Analytics, Search Console, critically important. There's a popular tool that you can use to crawl your website. It's called Screaming Frog. It is free up to 500 URLs, and you have to pay $150 a year. But being able to crawl your site on stage so that you can find all the pages and review the problems is critically important. And also, you can use our free tool, Search Advisor, that is specifically tailored for e-commerce website. It's a crawler, cloud-based crawler that can help with this step. Other tools that are important for these steps is being able to check the DNS propagation when you're making the change. You can use the DNS checker, and also Screaming Frog to be able to monitor your logs post the migration to understand see how Google is picking up the pages a lot faster. So let's talk about a partial migration. What is a partial migration? So if you have a large site, you don't want to be making the move of the whole site at once, because the risk is a lot higher at that time. If you're a small site, you can do the full migration, the whole site at a time. But for large sites, it's not very practical to do it. It's very risky to do it the whole site. So how do you do that? How do you do a partial migration of a large site? So what you do is when you have both sites accessible in the open internet, the old and the new one, and the new website you have it blocked completely via Roblox.txt. In the old site, what you're going to do is you're going to be the sections that you want to be moving, and start with the lowest traffic sections. You update the canonicals on that site so that they link, so that they are pointing, so they are cross-domain canonicals to the new one, or they are, the canonicals are pointing to the new website. And then what that's going to do is that as Google recrawls those sections, then Google is going to it's going to remove from the index the old pages, and it's going to get the new ones indexed. But you have to open up gradually the robots.txt file on the new site so that Google is able to access them. So that's where you start doing a section at a time. And then as you're doing that, you're monitoring both in Search Console and Google Analytics and the logs if you have them, how Google is picking them up, how they're getting indexed, their ranking, and then you start monitoring the traffic. So that way, doing it gradually allows you to minimize the risk big time and see that you're actually making progress. Okay? And then, what about how do you, when you're ready to make the full move of the site, especially if you're making IP changes, which typically is going to happen, is that the DNS, it can take a lot of time to update, it can take a lot of time to propagate changes, and you want to have the ability to roll back quickly if there is a problem. If you launch and there is a problem, you have to wait, 24, 48 hours. It can cost you a lot of money to do it that way. So before, around 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on what TTL you have right now, you want to log into your registrar, your DNS management, and change the Dns Ttl so that it is the minimum possible. So that way, typically you can get it to between, 15 minutes. Some even allow you to do it in second, half a second, 60. It depends, but typically, under an hour, under half an hour is the ideal TTL that you want to have. And setting up this TTL ahead of time allows you to, once you launch, if you need to roll back, you can just change the IP address and get the old site back in if you need to do it. So that's the main purpose of that. Another thing related to moving and rolling back is that in some cases that we've worked with, it is necessary to keep the live site, the old site, live in maintenance mode, because the database migration can take a few hours to complete. So if you need to do something like that, you want to put up a maintenance page, a nice page for your users to know that they can come back, or an email or a call number that they can still call in and order via the phone, is that you want to make sure that the maintenance page is returning a 503 service unavailable status code, because that tells us our changes that this is a temporary situation, that you're still that the site is going to come back and give you the but that definitely don't return 404s or 200 errors or 200 status codes, because that's just going to cause the pages that you don't want to be dropped or not indexed. And try to do a full redirect, try to redirect all the pages of the site to the 503 maintenance page. And our final point of the migration is the monitoring. Okay, so let's say that you completed the migration, you run through all the steps that I just mentioned. What you should be looking at, what should be monitoring on your stats to make sure that everything is working. So in Search Console, you want to be keeping a close eye. This is in the order of priority of the crawl errors. Crawl errors are a big indicator that some pages that you didn't account for and didn't get mapped. In crawl errors, look for not found. Okay, and also you can track that in your access logs. So as you see on a daily basis, as this is being populated, pull down those pages that are not being mapped, that you identified as not being mapped at the last minute, and implement 301 redirects of those. And you're going to be doing that for at least the first week or two to make sure that everything is correct. In crawl stats, you're going to be looking for. You want to be looking for Googlebot not crawling more pages than there are on the site. The XML sitemaps, you're going to be looking at the indexation levels. You want to have both sitemaps, the old and the new one, and you want to make sure that Google is dropping pages from the old site and indexing pages from the new one. That's what you want to have in both. URL parameters, if you see spikes in the crawl stats, check there in case you miss a potential infinite crawl space. Index status is important to see that everything is being indexed, and search analytics And search analytics is to make sure that your traffic is not taken ahead after the migration. And then, the analytics make sure your traffic is keeping up and getting better. The same, from the traffic logs, you're going to be looking at errors at 404 but faster than checking them on Search Console. And that's pretty much it. That we're going to cover.
Thanks, Hamlet. I know SEO is a critical part of the replatforming process, and I really appreciate your insight here. Next up, we're going to move on to another important aspect of your e-commerce move, and that's testing. Testing is so critical. And one really important thing to understand is to have clarity around what your development team's test plan is for your new site. Make sure you define for them or have them to tell you what browsers, what devices they plan on testing your site on. So as an example, for PCs, are they hopefully testing your site at least on the latest browsers of IE, Chrome, and Firefox? For Apple devices, for Safari and Chrome, what mobile devices are they testing your site on? Are they testing it on Androids, on iPhones, on iPads, on other tablets? So really having clarity around what devices and browsers and screen sizes are being used for testing. One way to determine what this list needs to be is to take a look at your Google Analytics and to see what devices are commonly using your site and to make sure those that at a minimum are those being tested for as a part of your site development process. So those are really good things to understand up front. In addition, it's good to understand just their overall approach to testing and providing a site for your testing. So at Brilliance, we set up a customer site on what is called a continuous integration server, which means that our customers are able to review the site throughout our development process. So within a few weeks of us starting on a project, we have a site available for them to look at and to review as we're developing. And as we are checking our code into a source control repository, it automatically is releasing it to this continuous integration server for our customers to review. And we also use a source code repository that enables us to track and troubleshoot issues. So whether your development team is doing that same thing or not, find out what their processes and procedures around testing are so you can understand how your team can be involved in that process, and you can kind of understand at what points you'll have opportunities to be involved in the testing. You should plan to test, regardless of how good your development team's test plan is. You're going to have a different perspective on your site as the person that knows your business the best, and really understanding how your customers approach your site. So don't just leave testing to your developers. Absolutely, they need to test, and you need to understand what they will be testing. But you should also plan on testing the site and take time to do that. As a part of the testing, and when we talk about testing with different browsers and screen sizes and devices, think through, how you're going to approach that. Are you going to actually be using, do you have Androids and iPhones and iPads? Do you have the tablets that you're going to be using as a part of that testing? You can use services like cross-browser testing and Browser Stack to support that process. They allow you with an account to go in and test many different devices. It's best to have an actual device versus an emulator where possible, but those services can help you kind of speed up the process and make it easier for you to test on many devices at once, and then maybe have some points in the process where you're using actual devices, but you don't constantly have to be testing it on the actual device itself. You'll want to make sure that you build in time at the end of your project, well, throughout the project, but also at the end of the project for testing and to make changes as a result of the testing. So you don't want to shortcut this process. You don't want this to be rushed. As really, doing a thorough job of testing is critical for a great experience for your customers when your new site goes live. Remember that to really test your site, you'll need good data that's similar to the data that will be in your site when it goes live, which brings us to our next point, which is the mock go live. In a mock go live, you or your development team is going to run through the various steps that are involved in taking the site live, with the exception of actually turning the URL or web address into the production URL. So you won't actually launch it, but you'll do almost everything up until the launch. You'll run through all the scripts to move over the data. You'll run through complete end-to-end tests with the various systems that will be integrated with the website. And this is a really important step for a number of reasons. It allows you to see the site as it will be when the actual go-live happens, and it allows you to verify that the data is what you expect it to be when it all gets moved over. It also allows the team that will be performing the go-live to practice their steps and identify any issues with scripts to really ensure that your downtime on the day of go-live is as minimal as possible. And it also provides that opportunity for that complete end-to-end testing with your final data set, or as close to that final data set as possible. In a recent mock go live we discovered that due to issues in the data that we received from the customer, the data transfer scripts errored out, and that caused delays and rework to be necessary in the scripts. And we had tested out the scripts previously, but we weren't working with a full data set. And if we hadn't done the mock go live, we wouldn't have discovered this until the day we launched the site. My goal is always to avoid or at least minimize the number of surprises. So that's why I really feel like a mock go live is beneficial. You may also want to consider a soft launch where you can invite some customers to give you feedback on your new site. You'll want to avoid taking orders from your old and new site at the same time, as this will cause confusion and issues in your fulfillment and business systems. But you can invite customers to look at a site that's been through your mock go live and give feedback on the experience as long as it's clear they shouldn't place real orders on the site. Once you've made it through the mock go live and have tested the site thoroughly, you're now ready to launch the site. So one of really key things about your launch is thinking through the timing of your launch. So typically we recommend looking at your analytics and determining which days and times are the lowest traffic. I have some customers who choose to take their new site live at midnight or 2 a.m. to minimize the number of people using the site, which can be a good way to go. Other customers choose to move their new platform at like 6 or 7 a.m. on a weekday. The advantage of a rollout that's closer to business hours is that if something arises that needs another business to support it, you don't have as long to wait to get it resolved. That really depends on your business and the amount of traffic you have on your site in terms of what will work best for you. I remember a time when we were doing a go live in the middle of the night. I think it was like at 2 a.m. And we ran into a licensing issue with the software that we weren't able to see until the site went live because it was tied to the domain being validated against the license. And they had the company that had created the license had a typo on their end in the license they created. And so we weren't able to see the issue until the production domain pointed to the new site because the person who needed to fix the licensing issue wasn't available until business hours. We had to kind of hold the go live to finish until they were in the office. So if you have your go live closer to business hours or even during business hours, that can help resolve those issues. But it really depends on the amount of traffic you get on your site and how much downtime you can afford. You will want to make sure that you have a page that you put up on your site that says that you're in the process of moving to your new site, that the site's under maintenance. Really think through how you're going to communicate with your customers during that process. Whenever you make the move, you want to make sure that you have a team standing by, including at least one representative from your development team. You will want to be available, and as well as someone from your customer service team. By having different members of the team available, you can have people test quickly and give feedback to work any issues. You'll want to place some test orders and make sure analytics is tracking properly. And the idea is to get through that as quickly as possible to get it launched. And then it's time to celebrate because your site's live. Ideally, things are working really well. You'll want to remember to review it against your original goals. Look at your analytics, your incoming orders, compare those to your expectations. Look at ways you can tweak to improve the results. Talking to your customers and getting feedback about what next steps are going to help you drive the most revenue and see the best ROI. So in today's seminar, we've covered a lot of information. We've talked about how to plan for the move to your new platform, including documenting your requirements and thinking through what requirements are the minimum you can accept and what others could be added over time. We talked about data that will need to be migrated and whether that will be done manually or via scripts and preparing for that work. We talked about preparing for data integrations, defining the data to be integrated, and building out integrations that don't exist within the new application. We talked through SEO considerations as a part of the transition to ensure that your SEO rankings don't see a negative impact through the site transition and hopefully see a positive impact. We talked about the critical importance of testing, including testing on multiple browsers and devices for both you and your development team, and the use of a mock go live as a final test. We talked through the timing of your launch and having the right team in place to make sure that goes smoothly. We have checklists available for you to download that cover kind of a summary of information we've talked about today, as well as some other topics we didn't have time to hit on around hosting, mobile security, and site performance. So be sure to download those. That wraps up my presentation.